Last 8 covers in a row that you did on Elvis in the Army with the patches, that's dumb, and that's boring. And you know why you did that? Because there's nobody else around. There's nobody else left to use. The business needs a new teen idol, and Tommy's the one. Look at that puss, will you? Huh? Look at that smile. They love him. I mean, this kid's got class. Look at those teeth. Now, what a face. This kid's really got it. I'm telling you. And you want to know what else? He could sing. This kid can sing. You're a pro. You know what I'm talking about.
A high-powered rock and roll promoter tries to fast-talk his client onto the cover of a magazine in The Idolmaker, one of 4 new movies we'll be reviewing this week on Sneak Previews. And across the aisle from me is Gene Siskel, film critic of the Chicago Tribune.
And across the aisle from me, Roger Ebert, film critic of the Chicago Sun-Times. Now, in addition to The Idolmaker, about which we're going to disagree, we have an extraordinary new film from Australia called The Chant of Jimmie Blacksmith, and the new film by Jean-Luc Godard, the radical French filmmaker making his first feature film in 8 years. It's called Every Man for Himself. But first, Roger begins with a much more conventional film called Fade to Black, a thriller.
Well, Fade to Black is a very creepy and fairly effective thriller about a character who exists almost totally in a fantasy world constructed out of his favorite movies. And this kid is obsessed with the movies. He works in a film storage and shipping warehouse. He goes to the movies every chance he gets, and even when he's home alone, he locks himself into his bedroom with a 16-millimeter projector and a TV set that's tuned to The Late Show all night long. This guy makes us look like occasional moviegoers. His obsession grows to the point that he begins to think he's seeing movie stars everywhere he goes.
Don't worry. No, better not. Okay, look. No more advice. As of this minute, you're on your own.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Eric. Happy birthday to you.
Are you an actress?
No.
It's amazing. You look exactly like Matt.
We know. Everybody says that.
What was the name of the movie that Tom Yule took you to see in 7-Year Itch?
I forgot. Is it famous?
It's a horror movie. I'll give you a clue. He was green and slimy.
Frankenstein. The werewolf.
Now you're just guessing.
Who the hell cares?
It was a creature from the Black Lagoon. Stupid.
Hey, how did you know that? It's great.
I go to a lot of movies. It's my thing.
Thrilling.
I love movies.
If only life were that simple. That was Dennis Christopher as the movie maniac. You may remember him as the star of Breaking Away, the kid racing the bicycle. And Linda Carriage did an incredibly good job there in that scene of imitating Marilyn Monroe. The opening scenes of Fade to Black are all sort of like that, with reality sliding off into fantasy. But then that girl stands the kid up, and then his aunt smashes his movie projector. That's really going too far. This kid goes berserk. He dresses up like his favorite movie heroes and goes out to get even with the world. His first victim is a hooker who insulted him a few days ago.
Listen to the children of the night. What lovely music they make.
I believe we've met before, my child.
What's your act, anyway? Not that I care.
Are you engaged this evening?
Yeah. Yeah, as a matter of fact, I'm late to another appointment, but, maybe some other time.
In addition to Dracula, he also masquerades as Hopalong Cassidy, Jimmy Cagney, and the Mummy. Fade to Black is fairly predictable. Once we see what movie character he's dressed up like, we can almost predict what he's going to do, but I sort of like this movie. It's not an all-time great thriller, but it does have a certain offbeat appeal to it. And Dennis Christopher is really weird and creepy as the killer. This is nothing like his performance in Breaking Away, which is probably why he wanted to do this movie.
I think you're right. He's very good in the best part of the film, except for that actress Linda Carriage as Marilyn Monroe. The film opens wonderfully, and I was rooting for it, but then I felt it degenerated. It got more and more violent with scenes like that, a lot of blood, a stick going through somebody's heart, that girl there. I thought that this film really fell apart at the end, and I was disappointed after such a nice beginning.
I liked it. I felt it had to end like that. It's a horror thriller. It's almost inevitable that this kid is mentally deranged. He's going to get more and more violent. That's the way the movie has to go.
Well, I just wish that it had been done with more of a spirit and love of movies throughout than just routine bloodshots.
Well, I think there are two attitudes toward how you feel about old movies. On the one hand, you can say, how come it didn't have more spirit, you know, of the love of old movies? On the other hand, I've met, and I'm sure you've met, people who really are obsessed with old movies,
yes,
to almost to an unhealthy degree. They get that strange light in their eyes while they corner you at parties and drill you with details about insignificant events in the movies. And this is a kid who just got pushed over the edge. He just lost his grip on reality. I like the fact that the movie went all the way with it.
Okay, and I didn't. Okay. Now we go to a film where I think we have more of an agreement. This is a step up in class. The Chant of Jimmie Blacksmith, an extraordinary movie, a film based on real events in the turn-of-the-century Australia. It's about the brutal wholesale slaughter of a number of white people by a young Aborigine man who was raised by a white missionary and his wife. Early in the film, Jimmie Blacksmith, the Aborigine, has a run-in with one of his first white employers. Jimmy has just been fired, and he asks for a reference.
Jesus, you're a fussy bloody black. What you want references for? A job in the bank?
So I can show it to other people who want fences done.
I haven't got me writing glasses. And I want you off the property by 10 in the morning.
Can I get a ride in tomorrow with you, Mr. Haley? I got a lot of things to carry.
I'm not going to Merriwa tomorrow.
I was thinking you might, it being Friday.
I don't need you to think for me. I'll ask you if I want you to do me thinking.
Yeah, well.
Yeah, well.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, boss. No reference. That's course you can't bloody write.
Jimmie Blacksmith has married a white woman who bears him a child, a white child that is not his. Every step of the way of this man's life, he is exploited by the white culture. His expectations are raised and then not met. He's a fractured soul, an aborigine displaced in the white world. So Jimmy goes on a rampage, leading a band of his friends, killing more than a half dozen people. While looking for food later with his brother, he stumbles across a school teacher and his wife.
I know who you two are. God, you travel fast. Oh, jeez.
It's all right, darling. We just spotted a rabbit. You go inside. I'll be in a moment.
No. Come on, Jimmy. Come on.
No. If you two gentlemen are in any doubt as to whether to kill us, just let me tell you, my wife's sick, and I don't have much insurance. And we're both bloody innocent.
You got any flour? Bacon?
Oh, yes. Enough of that. You don't have to think you must kill us. You let a couple live up in Barrington Tops.
As soon as we turn our backs, he'd be off for the bloody police. It was the school you did for Ned Kelly.
You're welcome to take my horse. I'm at least 22 miles from the nearest police station. A walk like that would take me 2 days. Look, I know I can reason with you, because you aren't mad, either of you. Let me show you something I know you'd enjoy. It's in the bulletin. By the way, I know you're not going to believe me if I say I've got no arms in the house. In fact, I've got a Bonza Martini Henry carbine. No ammunition in it. My father-in-law gave it to me as a wedding present. Everyone says a funny sort of wedding present. Someone said it was to keep the carbine.
Just show us what you're going to show us.
The Chant of Jimmie Blacksmith is a most political film, making the point that the traditional culture of people is sometimes better left unaltered. The missionaries initially attempt to integrate Jimmie Blacksmith into white society, but ultimately they abandon him. One cannot condone, of course, the murders that Jimmie Blacksmith commits, but through this film, which has all the power sometimes of a documentary, we fully understand why the murders were committed.
Well, first of all, I agree with you. I think it's a very good film, and in fact, I think it might even be a great film. It was very effective in taking me into that world that I was very unfamiliar to me, very alien, and making me feel as if I had really been there.
Yes.
But there is an area I'm not sure about, and that is that central bloodbath, the central image of the film when Jimmie Blacksmith and his friends go berserk and wipe out that family. Now, you seem to indicate that he was just pushed too far by white society and he couldn't take it anymore.
Yes.
I'm not sure. It seemed to me that in a way he might have just gone over the edge and lost all control.
Except that he's the one, Roger, who leads the killing, and he's the one who's been integrated into white society. So, the causality seems pretty obvious to me. I like what you said about taking us into the world. What movies can do best is take us to worlds that we can't visit ourselves. I'm amazed at how authentic this film. I couldn't catch it in a mistake. I'm stunned by that, how this film was able to get the people to do the things that they do. It's flawless in that way.
Well, you know, one of the things that I've noticed about this film and a lot of other Australian films like Picnic at Hanging Rock, The Last Wave, and Walkabout, is that they really evoke the majesty of that landscape. It's so big, it's so barren, it's so mysterious. There are strange animals there. There are places that have probably never been seen by human eyes. And in a way, I think that's what this film uses to explain Jimmie Blacksmith. Not his specific plot motivations raised by missionary parents and so forth, but just the entire culture that he comes out of that is so alien to the culture that is tried to be imposed upon him.
Well, we agree that it's a remarkable film.
It's a real good film. Right, let's move on to The Idolmaker, which is a new American movie inspired by the careers of the music promoters who manufactured some of the biggest rock and roll stars of the late 50s. Now, what we might have suspected at the time now turns out to be true. The Idolmakers were probably a lot more interesting than the singers they maneuvered into the top 40 lists. The movie stars Ray Sharkey as a Brooklyn songwriter who wants to take good-looking, unknown kids and customize them into rock superstars. And Paul Lamb plays his first client, a 2-bit saxophone player who has to be convinced that this guy can turn him into a star.
When are you going to wise up, Tommy? What do you want to do, play backup sax and juke joints all your life? Hustling dimes from the neighborhood kids? You could be somebody. You could be Tommy D.
Tommy D. Who the hell's Tommy D?
Go ahead, be a jerk. That's right. You want to know something, kid? We got the look. You know the guys in the fan magazines? That's it, Tommy. They got it. I can make it happen for you if you want it. What's it gonna be, pizza or caviar?
Sharkey creates Tommy D. He teaches him how to sing, how to move, how to dress, and how to turn on an audience. And every time his creation goes on stage, Sharkey is in the wings as a backstage quarterback.
You got that head turning walk, just talking about. Still want you again, but I am watching my step. I know my reputation, so you tell me when. You got everything I'd ever want. You got everything I'd ever need. So I'm coming to you, honey, with my love now in the lead.
Well, Tommy D's a big hit at the high school sock hop, but eventually, like every other teenage idol, he gets too big for his sequins. But the Idolmaker, Ray Sharkey, is prepared for that. He's got another potential hot property waiting in the wings, and this new guy, played by Peter Gallagher, is working as a busboy in a restaurant. He's never sung a note in his life. But Sharkey is filled with a sense of his own infallibility. His ego says he can make anyone into a star, even this totally inexperienced kid.
You feel it, you deliver it. 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Heel toe, heel toe, heel toe, heel toe, 1. Attitude and a 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Down, 1, 2. We ought to change places, man. You're the one with the talent. It's not enough. It's the looks that count. You gotta look the part, kid. I don't. You do. That's why I'm the manager and you're the artist. Come on, kid, you got it. You got it. I'm telling you. Hey, you were born with it. It's like a gift, you know? I mean, either you got it or you don't. You got it. I know it. I see it. I feel it. It's right here. All we gotta do is loosen it up and bring the talent up to match your face.
The new kid's first big concert begins with a riot. His fans rip the shirt off his back. But that's okay. After the police restore order, he comes back on stage with a bare chest, and the audience goes wild. The Idolmaker is a rags-to-riches story that works for two reasons, I think. First, because it has so much cynicism about the music business that it never takes its characters too seriously. The movie knows how shallow the top 40 scene is, even if these characters don't. The second reason I like the movie is because of the music. The production numbers in The Idolmaker are all staged with a lot of energy and style. They say this movie is based on the careers of Frankie Avalon and Fabian. And all I can say is I wish they'd been as talented as the young singers in this movie, because if they had been, rock and roll would have been a lot better in the late 50s.
Well, I agree with you on that point. I think the two young singers are very fine, and the production numbers are a lot of fun. I have a problem with the film and the main character, the Idolmaker, played by Ray Sharkey. I think he plays this thing way too seriously, way overdoes it, has some dumb scenes with other people, love interest, romantic people. I think that he is some sort of imitation of Robert De Niro, and he ruined the movie for me, which otherwise could have been a lot of fun.
That's very funny that you say that, because I thought that Ray Sharkey's performance is really what made this movie more than it might have been otherwise. I mean, in addition to the music scene and what it has to say about that and the songs, what I found fascinating is how much of an obsession he was able to project. Those characters of his that he's created out there on the stage, that's him, that's his ego. He tells them how to dress, how to move, when he's going heel toe, and standing backstage.
Of course.
That's good stuff. I really identify.
I thought that was good one time. I think he overplays it so seriously. Okay, let's move on to our next film. Jean-Luc Godard is one of the most important directors in the history of film, one of the founders of the French New Wave in the late 50s. Godard has never stopped testing the limits of film, striking out at standard politics and really standard methods of movie making. Godard always shakes up our film-going expectations by juxtaposing scenes and images in a way that is totally different from traditional narrative storytelling. During the decade of the 60s, Godard was possibly the most innovative filmmaker in the world, but after a serious motorcycle accident, he retreated to his native Switzerland, where for the last 8 years he's been making stylistically and politically radical videotapes. Now he's back, though, with a feature film called Every Man for Himself, and it has received resounding praise from many film critics, but it won't get that kind of praise from me. Every Man for Himself is an impressionistic film about 3 people, a male TV producer, his girlfriend, and a matter-of-fact prostitute. In this scene, the prostitute listens to the kinky demands of her businessman client.
Bon, qu'est-ce que je fais maintenant?
Attends, je réfléchis. Voilà le reste. T'es vraiment d'accord de faire n'importe quoi?
Ouais, si ça me fait pas mal.
Je ne fais jamais mal. Comment tu t'appelles?
Isabelle.
Bon. Isabelle, tu vas sortir dans le couloir, et puis tu vas revenir dans 30 secondes. Hein? Tu es notre fille, tu rentres d'Angleterre, on est en ville, tu viens nous voir à l'hôtel, puis tu dis bonjour papa, et puis tu embrasses ta maman.
Maman?
Oui, ta maman. Allez, tiens, fous le camp, dépêche-toi. Allez, vite.
C'est vous qui commandez?
That last scene switch from the prostitute and the businessman to the people in the street is typical of the basic construction of the movie and of Godard's films. He doesn't like standard story films. Godard interrupts the scene to go out on the street where we see that couple kissing. And for me, that couple on the street is the idealized happy movie couple, whereas the prostitute and the businessman are more like the truth of the world, according to Godard. Earlier in the film, we see the TV producer and his girlfriend talk about her desire to move out of the city into the country. Their barroom conversation turns into an essay on male-female relationships.
Laisse-moi le temps, quoi. Moi aussi, je deviens malade dans cette grande ville.
Je croyais, mais je ne le crois plus. Tu vois, même dans une petite ville comme Lyon, je commence à en avoir déjà marre. Ça m'aurait aidé que tu t'y installes. Parce que, soi-disant, tu avais besoin de tranquillité et que tu avais d'autres projets.
Mais j'en ai, c'est toujours vrai.
Non. À condition que je bouge pas. T'as besoin d'un ange gardien. Maintenant, ça me fait chier. Ni ange, ni bête, ni Dieu, ni maître.
Si tu crois qu'il suffit d'acheter un vélo et d'aller dans la montagne pour changer de vie...
Ça te regarde plus.
Oui, mais j'ai des yeux. Et je vois ce qui existe.
Tu as toujours voulu que l'amour vienne du travail, des gestes qu'on pouvait faire ensemble, et pas seulement la nuit. Ou que la nuit venait du jour et jamais le contraire.
C'est pas moi, c'est comment s'organisent les gens. On était d'accord qu'il n'y avait pas d'amour possible sans un peu de travail. Ou alors que des explosions, mais rien qui dure.
C'est trop dur ce qui dure.
It's always obvious that Godard does not make conventional movies. I think the best way to appreciate this film is to consider it as sort of a scattershot documentary of contemporary life. Men and women fighting, businessmen exploiting women, people rushing through the streets with more motion than substance. Now, that's not insignificant information, but that's about all I got from Every Man for Himself. An unnecessarily tortured film, I think.
I think we're pretty much in agreement on this one. And with any Godard film, there's always that temptation to just say, gee, this guy did such great things in the 60s. He revolutionized the language of cinema. He was the guiding light of the French New Wave. He's been gone for 10 years. This is the return of the prodigal son. Isn't it great to have Godard back? And the problem is, Godard is back, but it's the old Godard doing what he used to do and not doing it in any new way or with any new subject. When you made that list of things that you found in the film, I thought, that same old stuff again. You know, why see this film?
It's not fresh. I mean, the business of prostitution and its role in society, or is typical of the way men and women relate, you know, we had that included, and we go back in the history of films an awful lot. I don't think there is anything really fresh here, and I think it takes a little guts for us to say that. The easiest thing to do in a film like this is to praise a master filmmaker, I think.
Well, he really seems to have just, almost as if he had a crisis of confidence in coming back to feature filmmaking, and he said, look, this stuff has worked for me before, I'll do it again. Before, in the 60s, with every new Godard film, you had this feeling that something new was going to happen on the screen. Often it did. Not this time.
And now it's time for Spot the Wonder Dog and Dogs of the Week, where Roger and I each pick the week's worst movies.
Well, gee, my dog this week is a real bottom-of-the-bucket item named Walk of the Dead about some zombies stealing bodies for blood. Now, I don't even know what country this movie is from. It's supposed to take place in London. That means they show you a British taxi cab walking past every once in a while, or driving past,
Right.
But the characters live in Italian palazzos. They eat mostaccioli all the time. They speak in dubbed English, and the street signs in English are subtitled in Spanish. This movie has something for everyone. Every once in a while, the whole screen, though, is taken over by a big red sign that says, shock notice. Now, that's supposed to warn you about a violent moment coming up, but since the shock notices come after the shocks, however, what they really do is warn you that you just missed one. For example, a guy in this movie cuts his own throat, and then it says shock notice, and then we cut back to the guy, and what do you know, sure enough, his throat is cut. Really brilliant.
Awful, but
Right.
funny, I think. My dog this week is a hound from summer that refused to stop barking. It's Battle Beyond the Stars, a science fiction film that is mostly a Star Wars ripoff and partly an imitation of the Magnificent Seven, with Richard Thomas as a space adventurer who tries to save the universe from being overrun by a madman, of course. Thomas recruits the help of weirdos from all over the universe, including a cowboy played by George Peppard. Beyond the Battle of the Stars is really not original, not entertaining. It's just another watered-down version of Star Wars, ripping off kids who hunger for more of the real thing.
Well, so much for the dogs. Now let's take another look at the four main movies on this program. I liked Fade to Black, the story of a movie buff turned into a maniac. I thought it was a stylish and creepy thriller, and I recommend that you see it, but Gene votes no. He says it begins well enough, but it degenerates into a standard bloodbath. The Chant of Jimmie Blacksmith is the Australian film about a turn-of-the-century aborigine who goes on a murderous rampage. We both voted yes on this film. We thought it was a fascinating portrait of a tragic chapter in history. We split, though, on The Idolmaker, the story of a manipulating rock and roll manager. I thought the movie was an entertaining mix of cynicism and music. I vote yes. Gene thought it was an insipid, overacted, and juvenile film, and so, needless to say, he voted no. And finally, we both voted no on Every Man for Himself, the new film by Jean-Luc Godard. We felt the film showed the once innovative Godard repeating himself in an exercise in obscurity.
So we both recommend Jimmie Blacksmith.
Right.
It is extremely violent, we ought to point out, and yet it's a very fine film. Okay, that's it for this show. Next week on Sneak Previews, Roger and I will review 4 more new movies, including Times Square, the story of 2 runaway teenage girls who call themselves the Sleaze Sisters. Borderline, starring Charles Bronson as a policeman out to nail some smugglers on the Mexican border. And Kagemusha, the epic drama of a 16th century Japanese warlord. Until then, we'll see you at the movies.
The Chicago presentation of Sneak Previews is made possible in part by a grant from Bankers Life and Casualty Company.